Hey everybody, I'm Danny.
And I'm Andrea.
And this is the Voice of the Meeple. Today we're going to be reviewing Gloomhaven. We've gotten in about 22 plays, and we felt like we had to wait till we got quite a few plays in to really review the game, but at the same time we still feel like we've just barely scratched the surface. So we'll talk about how we feel about it so far. First off, the game doesn't really need an introduction. It, number one on Board Game Geek, it's the talk of the town. So everybody is talking about it. I'm sure you know the gist of the game, so we're not going to go into the gameplay itself. But I did want to start off by just talking about what comes in the game. Because I think one of the big things that's prohibitive to people is just how much the game costs. It's like $130. It comes in this giant box.
It's huge.
That we don't have room on the table for, as well as the other components. So it is worth the money, though. It's, you think about another game that you might spend like $80 on, like Scythe, or $100 on like Zombicide, and this game comes with so much more. We have most of the components up here. Let's start with the characters. So in the game, you're going to play as different characters. We have two out here that we're currently playing as. I'm playing as the Tinkerer.
The Quackheart.
But there are a bunch more, I think like 17 characters you can play as. Those are all the different minis. You unlock them as you go. So you start with like 5 or 6 that you can play as at the beginning, and then you unlock them later on. So there's tons of different classes that you can play as. There are a bunch of different monsters that you're going to fight. We have a few out here.
Careful.
This little organizer shows you how many different types of monsters there are. This even understates it, because in some of these boxes there are more than one type, and there's a boss box in here which has 15 different bosses in it. So there's just so many different monsters. They're each different, a little bit different in how you're going to fight them, how many hit points they have, what actions they do.
Yeah.
There are tons of different cards that you're going to be playing with. By the way, this is all organized in the Broken Token organizer.
Highly recommend.
You definitely need an organizer with this game, or else it's going to take forever to set up and take down. So this is all from the Broken Token, which we really enjoy, but it is a bit pricey. It comes with all these cards that you're going to take one, and it's like your motivation for why you're adventuring in Gloomhaven. So it gives you a condition for retirement. There are event cards for the road. When you're traveling to scenarios, you're going to do a little event. It'll give you choices on what to do. They're the same thing, but when you're in Gloomhaven, so city event cards. There are a bunch of those. There's a whole deck of cards for setting up a custom scenario if you don't want to do the scenarios that they prepared for you. If you just kind of want to just play it for fun on a random scenario, there's a bunch of different cards for setting one of those up. There are all the little cards in here. There's a huge deck. This whole thing right here are items that you can buy. Most of them are locked at the beginning, so you're going to unlock them as you go. There are random scenarios that you're going to unlock. There are all the tiles that you're going to play with. There's this giant stack of them, and they're all double-sided, so lots of different possible configurations for the maps that you're going to be playing in the various scenarios. You got some stuff over there too?
Just a little bit. Tons of tiles for different terrains, doors, shrubs, barrels, tables. Those are different things that show damage and things that can happen to you. They're all colorful and bright and well designed. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to show them the book that there's the scenario. Yeah. This is the rule book, which will walk you through how to play it. And then this is the scenario book, which has all the different scenarios that you can play, 95 different scenarios potentially, though you're probably not going to play 95 because when you choose to do some, it'll preclude you from doing others, but they're all in here. And then this is a map of Gloomhaven and the surrounding area where you're going, so you can put stickers on the map. This is insane. When you're punching out the punch boards of this game, and it's just punch board after punch board after punch board, it's just crazy how much this game comes with. So yeah, that's Gloomhaven. Thanks for watching.
No,
I'm just kidding. We're going to talk about what we like about it now. How would you start us off?
Sure. There are a couple things I like about this game. I like that there are story arcs that you're following. So you finish a challenge and then you're curious about what happens next. So you have a draw, a reason to keep playing again and again. I like that you develop a character and you get attached to your character I like that your character can evolve and grow over time. So you unlock different abilities, you collect and buy items, you get better at using the cards your character comes with. So I really feel like, my person has gotten better in this game, and it makes it interesting. I have like a stake in what's going on because I've played this character for so long. What else do I like about this game?
And she was skeptical of this game. She
Oh,
generally...
100%. I don't know. I'm not. It's not my style of game. It's primarily combat, right? Like 90% of it, and that did not appeal to me. However, the gameplay, like using a deck, selecting cards, trying to adapt the cards that you have to the scenario you have ahead of you. There's tons of strategy there, and they're really creative. You aren't just like, it's just punch or kick. It's like all these different interestingly named attacks that are suited to the terrain, and I don't know, there's so much thought that goes into it. It doesn't feel like it's just punch 'em up, kind of.
Yeah, and for us, it's become kind of our fun weekly date night. Every Sunday night we get out Gloomhaven, we decide which scenario we're gonna, what choice we're gonna make to which scenario we're gonna do, and it's a lot of fun to sit down and play. I also have a separate campaign going with some guys from work, and so you can do multiple campaigns at the same time. It's a lot of work to do. You have to reset everything, but it's a lot of fun.
You're up for the challenge, yeah.
Things that I like about the game. First off, I love theme, and this game is, it's full of it. It's so fun to get into the world of Gloomhaven. It's just such a huge universe.
Yeah.
There's a lot of flavor text in the scenario book that you're going to read as you start a scenario. There might be markers on the map that when you get to that door, it'll unlock some more flavor text. You'll read some more, and before you go into the next room. So it feels very much like you're going through this story, and it's a lot of fun to make different choices.
Yeah.
So I love that. Other dungeon crawlers, kind of like Andrew was saying, you basically you have the choices of moving, searching, and attacking.
Yeah.
You might have a couple different attacks you can do, but that's what you're doing, is just moving and attacking and searching. In this game, you have this whole deck full of different cards that you can do, and each card is a little unique. It's not just move and attack. There are lots of different things you can do. Like my Tinkerer can create traps, can create little mechanical decoys that distract people.
Yeah.
You can attack at range, you can pull people, you can do all kinds of fun things.
Yeah.
And so it feels very open, but also just the way the game's played, where you pick two cards, you're going to do the top action on one card, bottom action on the other card, and as you're going throughout the game, you're losing cards. Every time you rest, you're going to lose a card, and then when you run out of cards, you're exhausted. So there are two different ways you can bow out of a scenario. You can either lose all your hit points and get knocked out, or you can get exhausted from just running out of cards, from running out of time. And so it feels very much like a puzzle that you're trying to get done.
Absolutely.
And each scenario is different for the goals that you're going to have. One worry that I had was with 95 different scenarios, they'd start to feel a little stale.
Yeah, they'd like blur together and all be the same. No, they're really different. They have some you're trying to run through as fast as you can, some you're trying to like kill everybody in an area, some you're trying to just last long enough. There's one where we had to shepherd another character through and not let them get damaged. And based on those parameters, you're picking completely different cards. Like you'd think you'd get a small deck of favorites and use those over and over again, but no, it's every time you look at this, you read what's going to happen, you figure out the layout, and then you say, oh, actually these 11 are going to be much better than those. And it's really interesting trying to adapt to that. It feels new every time we play.
Yeah, and some scenarios are better than others, of course.
True.
But yeah, it's, each scenario really feels fresh, and it's fun to see, what's going to be the goal in this one.
Yeah.
One kind of unique thing for me is I started playing this game right at the same time I started playing Dungeons and Dragons. And so it's kind of fun to start them both at the same time, because you hear this compared to Dungeons and Dragons, or called Dungeons and Dragons, the board game version. Yeah. My take on it, personally, I like Gloomhaven better. I like both. I like Dungeons and Dragons a lot. They're very different. So I think if you are someone who loves Dungeons and Dragons and you're coming into Gloomhaven expecting it to be like Dungeons and Dragons, I think you're more likely to dislike Gloomhaven at that point. Whereas in Dungeons and Dragons, about half the time is like the role playing, making choices, going between combat, and then maybe 50% is combat. In this game, it's like 90 to 95% is it's a combat game.
And a strategy game. Yeah?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you're not role playing. You do make some choices, but that's a small part of the game that you do between mainly combat.
Role playing is fun and you can goof around with it, but it's not central to gameplay.
Yeah. So that is one big difference between the two. It's more like it's got the theme similar to Dungeons and Dragons, and it's got different classes and species like Dungeons and Dragons has.
Yeah.
But then it's put into more of like a Euro type card game.
Yeah.
So, but they're both very fun to play. The main advantage to this for me is you don't need a DM. So without the DM, it necessitates having more structure and fewer choices. You can't just do whatever you want in this world. When you meet an NPC, you can't just say, "I'm going to kill this person." You couldn't D&D.
There's structure. There's the book you kind of have to follow. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that does mean you can strategize better if you know what the options are. You can say, "Oh, which one would be the ideal one?" So.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about cons to the game?
Yeah, we have very few things we dislike. Honestly, this is almost the perfect board game for me. So it does have a few things. Oh, yeah. Oh, high praise. Yeah, what are the things you dislike about it?
You have to go down to like little details, honestly. One of them was because they have all these tiles that are meant to work with each other, there's some confusion about the borders. Basically, the idea is you can't cross off a card unless there's an overlay tile saying it's a door, but sometimes there'll be this layout where there's this open space and you think, well, I can shoot through here or walk through here, and it's not that way, so it doesn't match the scenario because it's kind of borrowed from another one, I think. So that's something that kind of bugs me from time to time. I don't know.
For me, my main thing against the game is there's the few places where it does kind of break theme.
Oh, yeah.
What I mean by that is, for instance, most of it happens with your items, actually. A lot of the ways the items are used. So, for example, you might have a weapon, like an axe or a sword or something, that you can only use once, and then it's used, and it's consumed.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really make sense. It's weird.
Really? It's like a single-use hammer.
Yeah, that's odd. You also, sometimes when you find items in a scenario, if you loot and you find an item, you don't get that item. It doesn't go straight into your deck. It goes into the store.
And you can buy it
later.
later.
You can go buy it in Gloomhaven, which is odd. It's like you're exploring and you find this thing and take it into the
Give
city.
Give it to them and then buy it later. Yeah.
So, I mean, I understand that you got to make choices for balance, for game balance purposes, but it would have been nice if you could have figured out a way to make the items work with the theme better, just because it's odd when that happens and the theme breaks down a little bit. Another thing is if you finish a scenario, the goal of the scenario, you complete it, but there's still tons of stuff on the board that you want to explore. You can't go around exploring the scenarios over, so you have to try to loot all the tiles, any treasure chests like this one
in the middle of it
before it ends, which is a challenge and makes it a little more interesting with the choices, but
thematically
it's weird that you would just walk away from all that gold.
Yeah, you empty the cave of bandits and you're like, well, that's it, time's up. Ignore the treasure chest. Yeah. I am a bit of a I don't know, pacifist, tender-hearted person, so I worried about playing a game that was combat, and there have been a couple of times when scenarios are a little thematically dark for me. So that's just happened twice. Maybe that one scenario was like, I'm not thrilled with this content. For the most part, though, it hasn't been gruesome or graphic or too much for me, which I don't know if you have people who are thinking about it and worried about that, but I thought I'd say that.
Yeah, and for the most part, you get to choose how you play the game. So you can play as a good party that's mostly making good choices, or as a bad party that's doing bad things, if that's your thing.
Because morality is black and white.
Yeah, in Gloomhaven it kind of is.
Very much.
But in some cases you're going to come across things that might upset people. So
yeah, heads up.
Yeah, but that's what we think of Gloomhaven. It is a great game. For us, we bought it after it had already gotten a ton of the hype.
Yeah.
It was already number one on Board Game Geek, and it lived up to the hype and exceeded it for me. So, if you're thinking about getting it, if you're on the fence, and you like strategy games, but also adventures. You want replayability, because this game, more than any other game I've played, has replayability.
It's incredible.
It is well worth the money you're going to spend on it, so highly recommend.
Thanks for watching Voice the Meeple. Bye.
Bye.